forward, we must recognize that in the midst of a magnificent diversity of cultures and life forms, we are one human family and one Earth community with a common destiny. We must join together to bring forth a sustainable global society founded on respect for nature, universal human rights, economic justice, and a culture of peace. Towards this end, it is imperative that we, the peoples of Earth, declare our responsibility to one another, to the greater community of life, and to future generations.
Thank you. Thank you, Orla. Again, welcome everyone. As usual, our intention is to be together and listen together as a collective, trusting the creativity, the ideas that will show up. And we certainly depend on stories. So our kind of agenda today, just to let you know, is we're going to hear stories about the rights of nature, what's going on in countries, cities, and Florida counties. And then what about Orange County and the Charter Amendment 1. And then as we think about ourselves as a conscious living system, we'll listen together for the potentialities in Orange, as well as 20 other Florida charter counties and cities. And what I'd ask for you to do is make notes about your questions so that we can hold them for the question and answers, and we'll let Gary introduce our wonderful guest today, Joe Bonazia and Chuck O'Neill. And will somebody or others of you be willing to put things into the chat to be sure we have some kind of record? Don't make it a burdensome thing, but if you will, that will be delightful. So Gary, it's on you.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will introduce the other two gentlemen as we get to their section. I'm just thrilled that we've been able to have this happen today. And I thank you all for indulging me last time we were together, just giving my little brief recap of rights of nature, and thanks to Linda for her article, which I think she sent to everybody and gives you a little bit of a view of what's going on in the state. And to Ensign, thank you, Ensign, for understanding the imperative that we get onto this so that we can be of assistance to the effort that Chuck is leading in Orange County, and your willingness to switch dates with me on our presentations, and of course to Sharon Joy. I mean, what a help in getting this all together. So thank you, Sharon Joy. I first learned about rights of nature when I became, when I was asked to go to a symposium put on by Pachamama Alliance. And I don't know if all of you know Pachamama Alliance, but Pachamama Alliance was formed in Ecuador some 20 to 25 years ago. And Pachamama is a word from the Quechua language, which basically means Mother Earth. It means the sky, the solar system, the entire universe, and all of time. And the goals of the Pachamama Alliance are to create an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just human presence on the planet. And so it's right in tune with the way that we operate in this group. And what happened in Ecuador was that there is a group of people called the Achuar people, and they're rainforest people who live in various communities throughout the rainforest. and they are a dream society. And every morning they get up and they go to the center of the community and they talk about their dreams and use those as ways to guide themselves in their living. And the elders were believing that there was some drastic thing that was going to be happening to them. And so they always said, when you see the jaguar, you face the jaguar. So that's one of their teachings. And they saw this thing coming and they reached out to get some help. And they reached out to John Perkins, who was an American citizen who was working with the shamans in South America. And so they knew that they could trust him, and they asked him for help, and he called in Bill and Lynn Twist. And then when they found out what the problem was, they ended up calling on Thomas Lindsay, who is the man that is now helping us with Rights of Nature in Florida. And Thomas was at his place in Pennsylvania, and he thought that it was a crank call. Who would call him to go to Ecuador to work on Rights of Nature? And but he went down there and helped them work through all of the details. And Ecuador was the first nation in the world to have Rights of Nature written into its constitution, which passed in 2008. And so Thomas Lindsay and Pachamama have been working together for a long time now. And one of the things that we realize is that Rights of Nature is not something that exists by itself, obviously, but it exists in terms of the self-government of people as well. And so in our country, the issues of democracy, the issues of home rule, the issues of preemption are all issues which impinge on or affect the way that Rights of Nature take place. And in terms of the way that the history of Rights of Nature, we can go back to the way that we frame our issues and how we think it creates the opportunities and the difficulties and the relationships we have. And of course, in the beginning of the Capra course, he talked about the mechanistic view of the world and the world of separation. But I'm sure that for some, our view of the Rights of Nature will seem radical, but it seems radical to me that we have a system that allows us to degrade the very base of our life. And people are willing to keep doing that with such danger to the existence of our species. So I also would like to say that it not only goes back to the Magna Carta, some of the democracy issues, but one of the things that goes back a very long way is the idea of the seventh generation principle. And I'd just like to read just a very brief thing here. It's the seventh generation takes its name from the great law of the Haudenosaunee, the founding document of the Iroquois Confederacy, the oldest living participatory democracy on earth. It is based on an ancient Iroquois philosophy that in our every deliberation, we must consider the impact of our decisions on the next 7 generations. And I want to finally guide you to the FRON website, and I suspect many of you have been there already, but FRONN.org. And in there are resources in the upper right-hand corner, and that will take you to 4 different organizations that have been working for a long time on Rights of Nature, and it will lead you all over the world to get the kind of information that will be helpful for you. And now I would like to introduce you to Joe. Joe Benazia came to some of our Pachamama events and was impressed by some of the things that we were doing and came to me after one of the meetings and said, Gary, I would like to work with you. Little did I know that he was already working with Friends of Wildlife in Cape Coral, with the Sierra Club, and I'm not sure what other organizations, but he now has added Pachamama and Rights of Nature and Citizens Climate Lobby. And so he's a go-getter. He's a retired English teacher from Long Island, and he has been like a brother to me and a real champion for the work that we're doing in Southwest Florida. So Joe, take her away, please.
Thank you, Gary. You sounded like a New Yorker there, Long Island.
I got it close enough.
You did. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. In the next 5 minutes, I want to do my best to convey some of the most essential information about rights of nature. The Rights of Nature movement is about several things. It is about legally recognizing the rights of ecosystems to flourish, to exist, to evolve naturally. Right now, nature has protections, has no rights. And getting to what Ensign said earlier about rights of nature and rights to nature, it is equally about the rights of people to clean water, clean air, and healthy ecosystems. My experience has been that most people green water, that the Clean Waterway Act guarantees it. It does not. Did I just freeze? I see my internet, my connection is stable, sorry. It is also very much about the fact that the current system we have is not working. It's failing us, it's failing the earth. All you have to take a look at is our waterways, take a look at the state of the world. Bottom line, the most fundamental thing about rights of nature is that it changes our relationship to the planet. I would like to go in a little bit deeper here and share something from a book that you might not think applies. I don't know if anybody has read Cooked by Michael Pollan.
Yes.
Towards the end of this, he says, scientists working today on microbial ecology are as excited as any I have ever interviewed, and he has interviewed hundreds of people, convinced, as one of them put it, that they stand on the verge of a paradigm shift in our understanding of health, as well as our relationship to other species. What they have found, these microbiologists, is that 9 out of every 10 cells in our body don't belong to us. They belong to microbial species. 99% of the DNA that we are carrying around is not us, is not ours, it's theirs. So this has led some scientists to begin looking at the human individual in a humbling new light as a kind of superorganism, a community of several hundred co-evolved and interdependent species. For most of these microbes, their survival depends on our own, and so they do all sorts of things to keep their host, us, alive and well. And of course, our health depends upon their health, them. Even speaking of us and them may soon seem quaint. We need to begin thinking of health as a function of the community, not the individual. And I thought that was absolutely fascinating, and it gets to the heart of what rights of nature is, because interdependence and community is what rights of nature is all about. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Aldo Leopold, and one of the most important environmental documents ever written, that was The Land Ethic, which he wrote back in 1949, I believe. And he starts by talking about when Odysseus came back from the Trojan Wars. One of the first things he did was to take 12 of his young female slaves and hang them on one rope, no less. Get a visual of that. 12 girls struggling and dying on this one rope. Did he feel bad? Should he have felt bad? He did not. because they weren't part of the Greek community. They weren't owed, they had no responsibilities as members of the community, and they had no rights. And at this point, this is where I want to start sharing my screen. So Aldo Leopold gets into a conversation about ethics. And ethics evolve from the fact that we are in a community and we owe members of the community certain responsibilities, and they have to respect some of our rights. So he says, okay, the history of civilization really is an ever-expanding understanding of what community is, which is why you're looking at a cross-section of a tree with all those rings. And when he wrote in 1949, he was saying, we have yet to consider the natural world as part of our community. We see ourselves as being separate from, superior to the natural world. And then he writes what Thomas Berry considers one of the most important words ever written regarding the environmental movement. All ethics rest upon a single premise, that the individual is a member of a community of interdependent parts. The land ethic simply enlarges the boundaries of the community. It changes the role of Homo sapiens from conqueror of the land community to a plain member and citizen of it. This is what is at the heart of rights of nature. This is how you explain why nature deserves rights. Thomas Berry, who is one of the principal architects of the entire movement, wrote, the primary supposition here is that the interdependence of every mode of being on every other mode of being requires humans to recognize that every being has rights derived from existence itself. This independence is immediately evident. We cannot have well humans on a sick planet. We cannot have a viable human economy by devastating the earth economy. It's the way we cannot be healthy if our microbiota are not healthy, and vice versa. The problem is that we, in our Western society, socially and legally, have yet to recognize the truth of this relationship. And that is why we are in the state that we are in. That's part of the great disconnect that someone mentioned earlier on. Legal systems are failing to protect the Earth community in part because they reflect an underlying belief that humans are separate from and superior to all others, and that the primary role of Earth is to serve as natural resources for humans to consume. Someone before said almost those exact same words. These beliefs are demonstrably false. Again, you have to take a look at the environmental crises that have been falling us and loom before us, and you see that these beliefs are demonstrably false. So, the rights of nature paradigm aims for a fundamental shift in governance, providing nature with personhood and the guardians to defend its right in court helps change the framework to a form of ecological governance rather than laws that provide only for human needs. This is a titanic shift in governance. Fully implementing a rights of nature form of ecological governance is the only way to reach true sustainability because it places human activities within the framework of nature's laws and limitations. Right now, we do our best to make nature meet our needs, our wants, instead of us working in her laws and limitations. And therefore, we're not going to live sustainably until we have this very, very significant shift. So getting back to Thomas Berry, when he speaks about that sentence or two by Aldo Leopold, He says that this carries implications that challenge the entire range of Western civilization. It changes all the governmental, educational, economic, and religious institutions, our society, as regards the ethical basis of what we are doing. Make no mistake, this is a radical change, as radical as was recognizing rights for women, for people of color. But those campaigns have been successful. This campaign will be successful. I think it's probably going to take a lot less time than people think. Oh, darn it. I want to go back to one other. Let me get this out of the way, make that a little bit bigger. I just wanted to leave you with an image that does a good job of showing the efficacy of rights of nature laws. This is a map of fracking sites and problems in Pennsylvania. All of those yellow dots, let me see, and the green dots represent fracking wells or compressor stations. And do I have that right? No. It's the green and the purple fracking wells and stations, and all the yellow has to do with violations of the regulations that are there to protect us. The man in the lower right-hand corner is Doug Shields. He is a former Pittsburgh City Councilman, and what he's pointing to is the hole down here. That's Pittsburgh. Back in 2010, they passed a rights of nature ordinance because they were fearful that the impacts of fracking were going to just impact them very, very negatively. Take a look at that. All the problems crowd around Pittsburgh, but they're not in Pittsburgh. That is the potential of rights of nature ordinances and laws. And that's what we want to bring down here in Florida.
Thank you ever so much, Joe.
Or too much overtime.
Okay, thank you. Now I'd like to introduce Chuck O'Neill. And I met Chuck a little over a year ago when he came to Fort Myers along with Thomas Lindsay and Chuck's wife, Doris, who is always there behind him, giving him all the help that he needs. And they talked to us about democracy issues and about rights of nature. And we had a full day Saturday and Sunday to work on those issues. And in the process, I found out who the real energy was behind everything that's going on in the state of Florida that I know of for rights of nature. And it was Chuck who invited Thomas Lindsay to his home, and he gathered a group of people to meet with Thomas and go through what the issues are around rights of nature. And that was a very short time ago, and I'll let him tell you exactly how long ago that was, but it was a very short time ago, and we already have got so much influence in the state that the legislature has made a move on us. So I'll let you, Chuck, go ahead and explain any of those things that you want to. And we're so happy that you could join us today and share with this incredible group of people what's going on in Orange County and how we might be of assistance to you. Chuck O'Neill.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Gary. And again, thank you everyone who's on the phone today from all over the world. You know, when we first started talking about rights of nature, as someone earlier pointed out, who are we to recognize nature? We're a part of nature, and also who are we to give the rights to nature, because nature inherently has rights. It has the right to exist by virtue of its existence. So what we're doing here and what we discovered over the course of time is not something new. It's something very old. the indigenous peoples of the Americas had respect and gave rights, recognized the rights of nature. So what we're doing is basically turning back the clock. Hey, we're making America great again, right? We're going a little bit further back than the current president might see. You know, back in the time that before European settlement of the United States. So just a little background. About 2012, I got deeply involved with the League of Women Voters of Florida, and went to an orientation meeting, and they said, what committee would you like to be on, Chuck? And I said, I'd kind of like to be on this natural resource committee, but I don't see that there's a phone number for a chairperson. And she says, well, we don't have a committee and we don't have a chairperson. So now you're the committee, you're the chairperson, go form a committee. And I took that on in Orange County and became the state chairperson for the Natural Resources Committee, and worked very heavily in Tallahassee, lobbying legislators to try and do the right thing for Florida. And as the years went by, I saw that the right thing is not being done by this state, that there are certain interest groups in Tallahassee that have taken up permanent residence that are shaping our laws that have every regard to the environment, and basically look at nature as something to be exploited for maximum profit. And when a bill comes to Tallahassee, I worked on the Florida Springs and Aquifer Protection Act with Senator David Simmons. It was a good bill. It goes to Tallahassee. What happens is the highly paid lobbyists for groups like Associated Industries of Florida, the Florida Chamber of Commerce, the Florida Farm Bureau, they go through the bill and then they defang it. They take out anything that could possibly impact their profits, and actually, in some degree, turn the bill around 180 degrees to further their dominance on nature in Florida. So as Gary said, last year in April, I invited Thomas Lindsay to come to my house, and I invited 25 friends from all across the state to come listen to him. And we really got an education in the truest sense of the word about how our laws came from England and how our laws are based on English law that recognizes two classes of beings on this planet. You have people and you have things. And people are rights-bearing, and things are objects for the people to exploit. Originally, people was not the entirety of the planet. It was basically white men. White men at the time of the drafting of the Constitution had rights. White property owning men had rights. People of color did not have rights. Women did not have rights. Children did not have rights. They were all property of the rights bearing. So we fast forward over 200 years. We're in this dire straits of, as I mentioned in the beginning, losing rivers and lakes and bays. And we say, you know, where do we go wrong? Where do we go wrong? And where we went wrong was the recognition that nature has rights. that we're not giving nature anything that it already did not have, but we are recognizing it in our law. And that's what we're doing here in Orange County. Through the charter review process, we were able to get a proposal that's on the ballot on November 3rd, so we're a little over 2 months away from the election, that will recognize the rights of the two major rivers in Orange County, the Wekiva and Econ-Lakahatchee, and all other water bodies in Orange County, to have 4 basic rights: the right to exist, the right to flow, the right to maintain a healthy ecosystem, and the right to be protected from pollution. And earlier, as Ensign pointed out, the rights to nature versus the rights of nature, there's a second part of that ballot amendment, which is called the right to clean water, that is more homeocentric in its design, that says that the citizens of Orange County have the right to have their waterways and lakes free of pollution. So once this charter amendment passes and these rights are recognized, then the enforcement part comes in, which enables any citizen in Orange County to bring suit and have standing to sue on behalf of a waterway. Now, that is not an easy thing to do, to bring suit, because you still have to prove harm. You have to go through all the necessary requirements of filing a lawsuit. And also, you cannot file a lawsuit frivolously without exposing yourself to civil penalties and the attorney to civil sanctions. So it's to be taken seriously. And as Joe showed you in the photo of Pennsylvania, what we expect to happen here is that the heavy polluting industries in Orange County begin to recognize that they have to clean up their discharge or they have to leave the county. What Joe possibly did not mention is, since 2010, so for 10 years now, the rights of nature provision has existed in the laws of Pittsburgh, and it has never been challenged. It has never been challenged by the fracking industry. They simply pulled out and went somewhere else. So you might say, well, Chuck, this is therefore NIMBYism, right? You want all the polluting companies to leave Orange County and go elsewhere. No, this is a network, Orange County being the first. We hope that Lee County is the second. Other cities around the state take this on, and it comes as a groundswell from the people up through our legislature, the recognition that Florida cannot be used as a thing, that it must be regarded as a living organism, which is what I believe the state of Florida is. And it must be respected and treated with rights that are inherent by virtue of its existence. So thank you for inviting me to ramble on here, but it just gives you an idea of where we're coming from and where we intend to go.
Wonderful, wonderful, Chuck. Since we have just a couple of minutes and Lisa Wanda Jones couldn't join us, please tell us about your co-defendant, you and Wanda, with your story of the trees to the tennis courts.
Sure, she's my co-plaintiff. We got involved. I had read a blog post where the headwaters of the Little Wekiva River were starting to be sectioned off and developed into industrial land. The headwaters covered about a 600-acre area. The one that she was most concerned with was 120 acres. So I met with her at a Panera coffee shop, and I said, listen, I want to help you. So we joined together and sued the city of Orlando to stop them from rezoning this parcel to industrial purposes. We are at the end of that lawsuit, we lost the first round, so we're now in appellate court, appealing the verdict of the first judge. And since that particular case, the city of Orlando has taken over 100 acres of forested wetland and clear cut it to build a tennis center. So this is our great sustainable, as I told Sharon, he wants to be the greenest city in the Southeast, clear cutting over 100 acres of forested wetlands within the city to build tennis courts. So, you know, everyone on this phone knows as well as I do that when you take on the environment as a passion, you're going to win, and you're going to lose. And generally you lose more than you win. But when you do win, it makes those victories even sweeter. So we are when we pass this charter amendment, the city of Orlando would be subject to it. So I won't say what we're going to do after it passes, but I'll just leave it to your imagination as to what the possibilities are when you recognize the damage that the city has done to the Wekiva River, among others.
Thanks so much, Chuck. And I want to tie in that networking, which is, of course, irresistible. Is some of you were at the Florida Interfaith Climate Actions Network Assembly last March, and Lisa Wanda Jones told us about this situation that was going on and what the city of Orlando was doing. And we also had Crystal Johnson from Dunbar and talking about what was going on down there. And then we also, I remember, gosh, I can't remember her name, talking about the sugar cane burning and how it depended on the wind. So this is very, very important. I just so appreciate all of the framing you've given us, each of you. And Joe, if you'll give us a little update on what the nascent possibilities of Lee County and the networks the counties you're working in, please.
I'm going to do this very quickly because I am very interested in getting to people's questions. So down here in Lee County, what you should know is that we tried a different route than the one up in Orange County. We tried to get people's petition and have a rights of nature amendment put on a ballot, but that proved to be just too much of an uphill battle. Getting 44,000 signatures is a Herculean task. So aside from having events where we are making presentations, getting the word out, having articles such as Linda did for us, that's going to go out to tens of thousands of people, we are now going to focus on much smaller municipalities in such places where maybe we only need to get 500 petitions or 1,000 petitions. That is a heck of a lot more doable. And the end result would very much still be the same. Somewhere in Florida, other than in Orange County, there's going to be a geographical location where nature has rights. and people can go to court with the standing to sue polluters on behalf of nature. We are going to also, we are pursuing the same path that Chuck pursued. We have someone up in Northport. We have presented them. We know that they are interested. And we have someone who's going to get onto their Charter Review Commission and introduce a Rights of Nature Amendment there. So we're going to pursue this in a number of different angles in order to finally make it happen.
Thank you so much. And I want you all to go back to that, the Florida Rights of Nature Network brochure and website, because you'll see there's a contact person for the whole state. It's broken into different regions, and you'll see your county in there and their email addresses. So let's open this up for your questions that I'm sure you have.
Well, I'd like just to make a comment because, you know, as an educator and mentioning the course that I took through the ARC Charter, that as far as I can see it, education is so critical, starting with young children, because if they're not in contact with nature, if they don't grow up loving nature, then they won't become the people who can make this happen. So I first heard about the rights of nature around 1991 in Tampa, at the University of Tampa. There was a woman who came from Philadelphia who has multiple PhDs, a really brilliant woman. I can't remember her name. I got to find out. But she talked about it at that point, and I thought, wow, this is like, because I think when you grow up loving nature, you never consider the fact that it had no rights and what that means, right? But when she presented that, it was just such a eye-opening, you know, idea for me. And I think by introducing it to young people who, when they're young, they love nature, right? They don't think of it as being in terms of I have rights and this animal doesn't have rights, naturally. So, you know, I think that making a concurrent effort to really do that kind of education, or even families with children, you know, to really engage them in this kind of, and as we work to create new laws, because we all know, especially Florida, it's constantly been driven by development and taking the land. It's been happening from the beginning, like all across the country. So that's, you know, what I would like to add to the conversation is sort of a multi-pronged approach for the future. And I wonder how long you think it will take. I know, Chuck, you mentioned that you thought it would happen more quickly than maybe expected. Is that because just things are at such a critical point right now? Is that why you're saying that?
Yeah, I think once this passes and the first suit is brought against a polluting entity, whether it's a corporation or it could also be a government, that is going to be a paradigm changing event. That children will be raised in a society in which the rights of a river to exist, or the fish in the river, or the otters in the river, to have somebody who can bring an action on their behalf, is going to be so shocking to people that the children will grow up in a society where they could not just, you know, go to a public meeting and say, hey, we shouldn't really be dumping into this river and killing the fish, but they can actually do something. You know, they can actually hire an attorney and bring an action, or become part of a group that brings an action in court, and that the court issues a judgment and says, Mr. Polluter, you've got to clean up what you've done back to the point where you first started polluting it. And that's what our charter measure says. That's the standard. that they have to restore the river back to the point before they started polluting it. And when these cases start to happen, as I know they will, and you're a child, then you start seeing, well, maybe this is not just an object for our pleasure. Maybe these animals, that they have rights. Now, one of the things, I want to take a little diversion here, if you'll allow me. Bill asked, what about animals? Which is a great question. What about animals? In 2015, the Florida Wildlife Commission decided that they would have a hunt of the Florida black bear. The Florida black bear had been protected from hunting for over 21 years before that happened. And it was such an anathema to the public that we would now be hunting black bears for our own personal pleasure. I, through my company, Speak Up Wekiva, a nonprofit, brought a lawsuit against the Florida Wildlife Commission and sued them in court. And this was before the hunt happened, and there was an emergency hearing for a temporary injunction in court. And I looked around and I'm like, this is really a great thing. I said, here is, we're in a court in Tallahassee. There are lawyers on both sides arguing whether it is proper to sell licenses to go out and shoot an animal for fun. And even though we lost that temporary injunction, the uproar statewide, if you know, for everyone who lives in Florida, can remember back in 2015, there were articles all over the state about, you know, why are we doing this? What's happening? So that was kind of a precursor to this, to say, how do we get to a point where we recognize that animals do have rights and that they have a right to exist and to live in peace? How do we get to that point? And really, the recognition of rights of nature in waterways is a step, I believe, to get to that point, because everyone consumes water every 72 hours. You could say some people are Republicans, some people are Democrat, but every 72 hours, people are drinking water, or they're no longer alive. So,
Right.
But thank you for the question.
It's interesting.
I would like to add a little bit to that, if I may.
Go ahead, John. Go.
I think I had also said that this is going to happen sooner than people think. I believe that in part because we've been down this road before with women's rights and civil rights and gay rights and such. Oh yeah, this is not new. There's another section of society or the world that hasn't been getting its due rights. It's time. On top of that, our experience has been that the idea of rights in nature resonates very quickly and deeply with people. They want to do something right away. Look at the enthusiasm about the topic on this call. Showed it right away. You hardly knew anything about rights of nature. Just the notion of rights of nature, they're very enthusiastic. I'm sure some of you know biophilia. There's this innate love of nature. The idea that nature is property is relatively new in human consciousness. For the 99% of our time on the planet, we thought otherwise. So those are just some of the reasons why I think. And one more reason, people are sick and tired of the way things are. They want to press the reset button on lots of different things. And this is one of them.
I hope that's true. I hope it's true, you know. But anyway, there are other questions probably out there. Thank you.
Linda, you're on mute.
Is there an actual law that says that nature is property? I mean, is there something that states that has to be overturned? I mean, I know that, I think you, Chuck, when you and I talked, you said that a landowner has the right to do whatever he wants or he or she wants with their property. But is there an actual law that says that nature is property, nature is a resource? Or is it a mindset?
No, it's built into our English common law. You know, when you buy, let's say you buy 15 acres, what do you
Right.
buy? You're buying property, right?
Right.
You know, you rarely see, Linda, where somebody says, you know, I'm buying a 15-acre community of trees and wildlife, right?
Right.
So they buy property, and they're going to develop the property. They're going to improve the property. I mean, this is all built into our system of law. When you appraise a property, does it have improvements on it? That means, does it have a structure that we humans have built on that property? As far as the legalities of it, you know, there are certain limitations, and some of those limitations have been taken away. It used to be that you couldn't cut down, let's say you had a massive oak on your property, you couldn't cut it down unless you got a permit from the city, and they would come out and take a look at the tree, et cetera. And then I believe in the legislative session before this past one, they passed a preemption, the state legislature, that said that local communities no longer can do that. That if somebody wants to cut down a tree on their property, as long as they get an arborist to sign a statement saying that the tree will die eventually, you know, as they all will, that they can cut the tree down. And you know, when you talk about, for instance, animals are property. Your dog, your cat, that is your property, and to a certain extent, anything up to cruelty laws, you're able to do whatever with that animal.
I
So-
might say that people treat their pets, animals, better than they treat nature. I mean, seriously.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, most people, let's say most people treat the animals. So now,
Right.
now if you owned a bear bile farm in China, then you might,
Right.
you know, think differently. I mean, animals used in food production are definitely not treated very well.
Right. And the other thing is, when it's time, if there's any legal, like court fees, attorney's fees, who pays that for helping to pursue the rights of nature then? If once this is instituted, and once it goes in, who's going to defend that then? Who helps to pay for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Over the course of time, and Joe and Gary know this, that we've been blessed with attorneys who work pro bono on these cases. So we pay filing fees to file cases, and then for the large part, attorneys are offering their services for free to us.
Mhm.
So I mean, those are the real gladiators that go into the arena and battle it out. I'll tell you this, that tomorrow morning at 9:30 we'll be in court again. There's another charter amendment on the Orange County ballot to stop the destruction, running a toll road through a wildlife preserve. And the Osceola County and Orange County jointly own this preserve, and Osceola County is suing Orange County to take the charter amendment off the ballot that would protect that preserve. And so we have attorneys working pro bono tonight on that, and they'll be representing us tomorrow morning at 9:30.
Great. Ensign,
Chuck?
you're wanting a question answered.
I wonder how the Children's Trust action relates to all of this.
You know, it's funny that you should mention that. I just got a call from Nicolette Springer, who ran for county commission here in Orange County. And we had met. I had supported her when she ran for office. And she said, Chuck, you know, I've been watching what you've been doing with this Rights of Nature Charter Amendment. And she said, how can we do that? How can we do that with the Children's Trust and get it passed? Somebody had something. Anyhow, what I told her was, you know, I'd be glad to work with you to show you what we did, how we did it, and how it's progressing. It's at 6:30. Unfortunately, I have to leave this call because we have a campaign meeting with the Right to Clean Water, our charter amendment, and the people who are working on that campaign and putting together commercials and artwork and getting signs out. I mean, it's just like any other political campaign. You have to get it passed. So that's another thing that would have to be done with the Children's Trust is, you know, once you get it on the ballot, that's one thing. But you can't break out the streamers just yet. You still have to get it passed. And
Before you
we
have
already-
to leave, why don't we let Elizabeth ask her question, unless it's
Sure.
because it may be something you need to answer.
Sure.
You're muted, Elizabeth.
First of all, I just want to reiterate what an important work this is. It's fundamental. It's just amazing. However, ladies and gentlemen, let us not fool ourselves. There's an urgency, and we can talk until we're blue in the face about a paradigm shift. But we're talking about a limited time when everybody's awareness must change radically.
Yeah.
And we can say, yeah, it's English law, it's Christianity, because it is Christianity. I think Linda asked why. It's Christianity. It's really a dominion theory, which is one of the three major creation theory, where anything who is not a human is property. So in other words, it's also part of our baggage that we bring, not from English law, but definitely Chuck said it's also from there. But let's just talk about this paradigm shift that needs to occur with the urgency. In the ethics classes that I teach, I had 25, 30, 25, 26. In the environmental ethics class, I am lucky if I can get 10 students. Why? Why is it that in the law school, even at St. Thomas University, the different classes that deal with law of animal rights have a very different perspective? Finally, Herman Green from the Center of Ecological Studies in North Carolina is really finishing up right now a textbook that would allow law students to understand who will become good attorneys. So therefore, my question to you is, how are we going to make this paradigm shift a reality? It is necessary, but somehow it doesn't seem that people are willing to make life changes in order to bring that about.
Yeah, that's a great question. The sense of urgency. I mean, we're on the brink.
Yeah.
I mean, we're. You don't have to look too far to see that our relationship with nature is at at a critical point. I mean, people, you go outside, people are wearing masks. It's why? Because nature is fighting back. You know, nature is going to do what nature needs to do to survive on this planet. And it's kind of telling us that we're not doing a good job here. So how do we speed this up? I believe we speed it up by making putting this into our law and then letting the system crack. It's sort of like a block of ice, right? You make one crack in it, and then that crack spreads somewhere else, and that crack spreads somewhere else. And what we're doing here is putting that initial crack in Florida. Now, this type of law has been put into effect in 36 different towns, mostly in the Northeast. This is the first time that it will be put into law in a county in the United States. And when I say a county, Orange County has over 1.3 million people in it. It's larger than 10 states in the United States. So by setting the example, I think that's how we speed things up. By saying, okay, look, these people in this county decided nature should have the right to exist. It should have the right to maintain a healthy ecosystem. And then from that point, I mean, I'm already getting calls from different cities and counties. They're like, how did you do that? What are you doing? How did you go through this process? So, you know, with the help of Gary and Joe and a lot of great volunteers from around the state, you know, we're pushing this forward, not just in Orange County, but in other places around the state. And then, you know, that will transfer into other places around the country. And, you know, as Joe said, a rights-based movement takes on its own energy, its own momentum. And I can only hope that we do it in time, you know, it's not too late.
Thank you, Chuck. I know you need to depart, and I want to let people give you their thanks. And if you're open to staying on, Gary and Joe, and listen to more questions, we will. But thank you so much, Chuck. And anybody else like to comment as Chuck leaves?
Silent Spring.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, bringing that up, I have a number of resources, very, very good resources for people to check out if they want to dig further, and I will just email them to everybody.
Great. Thank you all for having Joe and I and your terrific group, and a lot of great questions and great minds, and hopefully we can join together and make this happen, not just here in Orange County, but worldwide. So thanks again, and I'm sorry to have to leave, but we've got an election to win here.
Chuck,
Good luck.
Chuck, this is Gary.
Good luck.
Chuck, this is Gary, and I'll join you. I'll stay on here for a while, and then I'll come and join you.
All right, great, Gary. Thank you,
So-
I'll
everyone.
catch you in a couple, Chuck.
We've been learning about networks, and we've been learning about systems. We are becoming a conscious living system. So I want to be sure we remember before we go on to our usual patterns. I put that in the email invitation. Let's try to think like a system, and the percentage of life that we have among us as we explore how we can lean into this happening and the shift of consciousness that allows these bills to be passed and the pollution to be cleaned up. So Joe, you had more to add? Yes?
Sorry?
I thought you said you had some more information to add. Did I mishear you?
I said, yeah, I had some resources. I have, it is written, it's called Noah's Second Voyage. It is written by the co-author or a co-author of the Clean Water Act, a professor, highly regarded man, Oliver Hauck.
Could
And he-
somebody excuse me, Terry's been so great about putting things in the chat. Could somebody else add so that Joe can have these words put in our chat and we'll have this resource, please? Anybody
I
else?
could put it in there right now. I could put it right down.
Well, they can
Right.
type while you talk.
Okay. His name and
Yeah, there's a lot of holes in
is-
what I,
Yeah. It's called Noah's Second Voyage.
Ah,
And there is, if you want to know the constitutional theory or argument behind rights of nature in the United States, there is Phoenix Rising by Thomas Lindsay.
mm,
And the last thing I'll note, for those people who haven't read it, Thomas Berry Thoughts is a very, very good introduction to rights of nature. He covers just about everything. The man was absolutely amazing and wonderful. Between those three courses, you'd have a really good foundation in rights of nature.
and tell us about the program that you're going to have on Thursday, and we can follow up with an email with that also.
Okay. Well, every Thursday at 6 o'clock, statewide call, Florida Rights of Nature Network, but we also always have guests, or usually we have guests, and that would be a perfect place for anyone interested to get more involved and help out with the networking and help out with the cause and to get that paradigm shift going as quickly as possible.
So Joe, if you'll send that invitation to me, I'll circulate it to the entire Florida 40 network.
Okay, that
That's fantastic.
Chuck produces that or generates that. It'll probably be on Thursday morning. I'll send it to you then.
Thanks.
Okay. I too am part of that 6:30 campaign call. So I'm too going to have to leave. I thank everybody for
Thank you so much.
being with you tonight. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Joe. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Great job,
My pleasure.
guys.
My pleasure.
thank you.
Thanks so much.
Joe, did you say 6 o'clock? Then you said 6:30
Yes.
just now.
6. They're going
Okay.
to a meeting now at 6:30, but Thursday it's at 6. So I'll stop the recording and release everybody from whatever commitments you have, and blessings to all of us. And thank you so much for relinquishing your time,
Great
Ensign,
job.
and Gary for jumping in.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank
Go on,
you all
John.
so very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to present this material for you today. And I hope that you will find this compelling enough to be able to get involved at whatever level you can. And if you go to the FRON website, there are contact people in whatever region of the state you have an interest in. And if you have people like Sharon Joy does, people in Orange County who might be helpful to us, please pass that contact on to us so that we can follow up and get them involved. And you know, if you want to be in part of that with them, you know, we're happy to work with you any way that we can. And of course, the campaign takes dollars, so we're looking for some support that way as well. So, you know, whatever you can do to help. This is truly a systemic change that we're looking for, because the current system is not working well, and it has really the potential to change the dynamic between humans and nature. And how can you get any more dynamic than that? It's just incredible. Look forward to your being part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
And
Bye-bye,
Ensign
everyone.
will pick up with the rights, with the Children's Trust. That's definitely something I've suggested we align. That sounds like an easy
Yes.
partnership. There are lots of others that we'll pick up on. So
Good.
thank you. Join your next meeting.
Thank you, and I'll probably
Linda.
talk to you tomorrow, Sharon.
yeah.
Joy. Okay.
Okay, just wanted to say one thing. I just discovered this. Marie Nelson sent me something, and then I went looking for more on it. There's a new party being formed. It's called the People's Party.
Nice.
Has anybody seen that? That's I think it actually is peoplesparty.org. They had a convention, and these are people who are fed up with the two-party system that is not serving the people.
Nice.
So they are actually, and there were some pretty good names in there. So I just alert you to that so you can look for it on the internet somewhere.
Excellent.
Okay,
Any final words?
goodbye.
It's so hopeful. It's so hopeful to see, because we can talk all we want and we want to do stuff, but if the laws aren't being interpreted in our favor, you know, and here we were with people who are working with the law. I just find it, they're kind of the gatekeepers.
Yeah.
It's really great. Thank you, Gary, for, you know, for your
You
effort.
betcha. Well, Chuck and Thomas Lindsay are just superheroes. Chuck
Yeah.
for the state and Thomas Lindsay worldwide.
Yeah.
And he's going to be on a webinar for Pachamama on the 21st of September. And it's not been officially announced yet, but it will be 3 o'clock in the afternoon here on the East Coast. And it's going to be recorded so you can go back to it if you can't make it on the 21st. But he and a woman who has been Pachamama's right-hand person in Ecuador working on rights in nature are going to lead up the webinar. And then Joe and I are going to be on a follow-up event after that. So,
And also that Thomas is making a Florida tour of colleges and universities.
yes.
So start to think of your contacts where he might make a stop and speak to our young leaders.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Sharon Joy. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, peace. Bye.
Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
Thank you.
Has somebody picked up on the